Welcome to the Tenet Podcast. My name is Todd Pearson, here with my good friend and podcast partner, Wes Brown.
Hey, everybody.
God, you kill me every single time. Every single time. I thought we were going to do it so well tonight.
I know, I did too.
Bam.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Todd. It's good to see you on Zoom.
It's good to see you too, man. We have a wonderful podcast for you this evening. We've had a couple good podcasts the last couple of weeks, kind of varied from our usual format of talking to artists. But tonight, you're going to get a really nice interview with a wonderful artist. Her name is Lee LaBier. Lee, how are you this evening?
Hi, I'm doing great tonight. Thanks so much for having me.
We really appreciate you coming on, and we have a ton of questions, and I know you have a really interesting art journey. So let me get right to it. You grew up in New York. You're not from Denver. Is that correct?
That's correct. I did. I grew up in upstate New York near Albany. So I was definitely a country kid that just like ran around outside adventuring and eating the fruit off the trees and all that great stuff. So yeah, I stayed there for quite some time. And then as I moved away from my childhood home, I just moved around New York quite a bit after that.
So when you said like eating fruit, I grew up in South Dakota, and I can remember pulling carrots out of the garden and eating them right there.
Exactly. We did the same thing. We had apple trees, pear trees, and we went to the garden and did the same thing. It was just one of those really great memories of growing up out there.
Yeah. Eating rhubarb, which
yes.
That stuff is not very good. It's really bitter, but man, we would just pull it and eat it by the handful. So anyway, thanks for saying that, because it had an instant flash of my childhood. That was awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Did you grow up in an artistic family?
I did not, actually. My parents were very practical, working to just keep everything going in the family, the roof over the head and food, shelter, clothing. So they were just, they grew up that way as well, though. It was a generational thing. They grew up with their parents doing that, and that's what they had, learned and what they continued. And being the youngest, though, I was the farthest from that. And I think it was very advantageous for me to be the youngest, because by then they just didn't care. They're like, they just kind of let me run wild. And so that allowed me to be very creative and go outside of the box. It wasn't until years later that I found out, and I think my creativity came from my grandmother. She was a musician. She composed music, and she had a few records cut and things like that. So I think that's where I got it from. That's
really cool.
Yeah.
It's always fun to find those little interesting tidbits about, grandparents or aunts and uncles, or it's interesting to see where you get certain traits. Were you educated in New York?
Well, initially I did, all my basics and went to work during high school as well as after for quite a few years. And then I finally decided to attend college. It's kind of one of those things where at the time I needed to work because I was on my own, and decided that if I wanted to expand my world, whether it was just to learn or to create a better life for me, that I needed to attend college. And so I put myself through community college at first. I thought, well, if I have to do all these, because you have to do all those foundation classes. And I said, well, if I have to do that, I'm going to do it as the least expensive way I can do it. So I did that at a community college in Schenectady, New York. And it just so happened that you have to take all those electives as well. So I was like, what am I going to do? So that's actually what was the catalyst for me. I took an art elective class, and it just sparked something inside of me. And from that point on, everything changed. I did everything that was art related and changed my major even, and just couldn't get enough of looking at art and reading about it. And I did just like sit on the floor in the library, just right between the stacks, and just kept pulling books and books and books off the shelves and just kept looking through everything. And I just couldn't, like, it was just so enthralling, and just like, just how everyone approached it, and what materials they used and why they used them. And just the depth of it was overwhelming. And I just couldn't stop. I just kept going.
So you're giving yourself your own little history of art course.
I did. Yes. And it was so interesting, because even that elective class, I didn't do well in it, but it didn't matter, because I just suddenly realized, like I said, it was just something that just opened my whole world up. And so I did finish my classes there, and it was so impactful that I did transfer to a 4-year university and did art history degree. And then it just kept, building from that point.
That's pretty cool. Is there a certain period of time or a certain period of art that you're drawn to?
It's hard for me actually just to select any one period, because I always find that as I discover whether it's an artist or a piece of art, what certain thing about that is more intriguing to me than the time frame. And I don't even remember the artist. I just remember it was a hand-carved wooden sculpture. I don't even know the time period. I just remember it being, early on in history. And what was so interesting to me was that the wood that was selected in their culture was considered, one wood was considered female and the other wood was considered male. And that's the portraits or the figures that they had sculpted. The female was from that wood, and like, just to think of like how someone would put all of that together, or like, even when you're looking at a piece of art, like, you really need to take the time and get into the intricacies of it, because like, I would just look at that and think it's just wood, but then it had all of this history and culture and meaning behind it, just the simplicity of the wood that they selected. So it's hard for me to just pull from one type, one like impressionism or cubism or, so it's really each work specific for me. I do enjoy all, like, the way things have gone through to where we are now, with technology and the alternative processes that we have now. Because I've talked to a lot of artists about that, how we have ideas, we can't always bring them to fruition because we didn't have the technology or the materials, and now we do. So we can actually continue to expand on what we're creating. So yeah, time frame kind of doesn't exist for me. I just, like, if I see something.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, it seems to me like it's more, you're fascinated more with the process, the thought behind it, of how a person arrived, an artist arrived to that juncture.
Exactly. I'm very conceptual. And I love that process of like being in that person's mind and how they got from, the beginning of what they wanted to create to where, where the final product is. Because I know personally for my work, I have a general idea, but I do just let it grow and morph and let it do what it wants to do, because I think if you try to control it, then that's where you're going to lose that passion, or that part of your spirit will be missing from it. And then I think when people are viewing it, they might even be able to feel that. So by just letting it happen, I think creates a greater response also from your viewers, because they can feel that energy from it.
For you, does it seem like it comes from somewhere else, or is it guided by, because obviously a lot of your stuff is autobiographical, or at least it appears to be, yes, just looking on the surface. But you definitely have, through your different series, something that like when I look at it, it's like, how did she come up with this whole concept? The simple, walking through your neighborhood and taking the same pictures of things that we walk by and never look at, or through the fences, but there's an element there that is beyond just it being there. I'm just wondering where some of that creativity comes from, as we're talking about inspiration or whatever.
Well, most of my work, like you said, they are self-portraits, and it's what I consider autobiographical, confessional art. So I'm very much allowing myself to be vulnerable and allowing people to really see inside of me and be a part of me, and whether it's the beauty of something or the trauma of something, because often I create the work that I'm creating, it usually comes from a darkness, and then I veil it in beauty. So if people take time to sit still long enough and be quiet long enough with the work, that they'll see that there's something else happening there. For Walking Wonders, I didn't start that particular series thinking it would be a series. It was actually, I was going through a transition in my life, and it was a very hard year for me. And so I've always found walking being very meditative, which Todd and I have talked about that. And I walk an hour a day without fail. And for that particular series, having come out of a very hard time, I thought, just be in nature, just keep walking, and take that time for yourself. And I had my phone, and it was an extension of myself. And so I just thought, just take a photo of whatever catches your eye. And it actually, the whole thing of that allowed me to be present in that moment, and nothing else mattered. And so that's how that series happened. And I walked the same 3 miles every single day, and tried to find something that like somebody would present itself to me every single time without even trying. It was just there, but it was the same thing. Like I just had to learn to be quiet and to be present, and it just revealed itself to me. So that series, actually, I think in the end, it became being just very therapeutic, and got me through a really hard time. So the fact that that series came out of that, and there's actually 100 photos in that series, and the book has 50 in it, because I ended up creating a book out of that as well, which
right. I noticed that. Yeah,
I was very excited about that. That wasn't planned either. It just was one of those things that just came out of that, and so not only for it to have been therapeutic, and then it got me through this hard time, but then in the end I had all these beautiful photographs that I could look back on, that was like, oh, that day, like I can remember every single one, that because I was so present that I could remember every single photo, where I took it, and everything. And so for me personally to look through that book, I'm like, it's just like bittersweet. So I really love that series.
I really like it too. I mean, I was really impressed with it. I went through well, obviously I didn't see 100 images, but the images that are on your website, I went and spent some time with them. And it's just interesting. The one with the hole with the leaf sticking out in the metal pipe. I just was like, oh, that is so cool. I would have never probably, like you said, I wouldn't have probably even seen it, let alone take a moment, be present in it, and take that image. I just thought that was really cool. And I love that philosophy of like being present, being in the moment. Well, not obviously to you, but but I've spent some time really trying to study, being introspective of my life, and spending some time and being present in the moment, and not worry about where I'm going as far as long term, just really be in the moment of things. So I just really, you really speak to me, and that was a great series. So thank you.
And thank you. And I think that is part of it. I think we're all just moving so fast every day and through our lives that we're missing out on things, So, and I've carried that on because I realized just how much it changed my life. And so I still do that every single day. I still do that. And it just has been such a life-changing, and it's just such a little thing to do, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it does take time to learn to be still, and to take that time and that it comes down to taking time for yourself. Like, I really enjoy doing that. And Beyond the Fence, that series came into play because I move so much. I've moved all over the country, whether it was mostly for art jobs, and sometimes just because I'm impulsive. So Beyond the Fence started because it was another move, and it was actually right very close to me when I arrived in Colorado. And I found that photographing location helped me not only familiarize myself with my new place that I'm living, but I also found that because my work is about how our identities are formed and how they transition. And so I found that location is really important to that. So wherever I've lived, there's different energy in different people, and the culture and the lifestyle is so different. So, I found that location has played a large role in how I live and how my life is transforming and how my identity transforms. And so the Beyond the Fence series was part of that. I was living in Five Points many years ago, but I loved it because it was such a diverse group of people, and it's not like it is now, of course. Like, I used to ride my bike down Larimer and there was only one bar there. Now it's, so grown. But that helped me learn the neighborhood I was living in and meet people. They were like, there's a girl with the camera. That's what they called me, the girl with the camera. But so it actually was something that I just was doing even prior to being in Colorado, but I didn't realize I was doing that. And for some reason, that moment in doing it here, I was like, oh, so it had multiple layers to it.
When I was looking at, it's very voyeuristic, because you're peeking through a fence, or you're peeking through like the orange fence that, construction people put up. There was a couple of them that, although there was nothing unusual happening, but it made me feel a little uncomfortable, like I was spying almost. And yes. I don't think that was your intention, but it was kind of funny. Like I would get different feelings. Yeah. A little bit. Okay.
It was a little bit. Yes.
Yeah. So, but I definitely
I didn't know who. Yeah.
And so, cause there was a few that you'd taken pictures of people on the street, and as being a female in Five Points many years ago, because I used to live in Denver, so I know the reputation of it, what it used to have. And I know it's because of gentrification, it's changed. But so did you feel safe? People open to letting you take pictures like that? Or did you kind of just do it kind of on the sly?
I personally felt safe. I've lived in some really sketchy neighborhoods in New York. So, I felt safe, and actually the neighborhood was wonderful. Everybody was very nice. They would talk to me somewhat, but it was actually very difficult for them to trust me to allow me to take photos of them, because they were unsure of me because I wasn't part of their neighborhood or their culture. And so, but they did get used to me, but I wasn't they were very cautious of me. Mm-hmm. So, which I completely understood. And if they didn't want me to photograph them, I wouldn't. But so often it was of their spaces instead, their yards or their fences and things like that. And it was interesting what they would do with their fences or inside their yards. And in that particular area, they often did the thing where they would cut the tub in half, and they would make this beautiful kind of archway, and it would have a religious figure in there with flowers and things like that. And I just always thought that was so beautiful. And I was like, oh, they're recycling and reusing and repurposing all of, these things. And they would put this beautiful sculpture in there with, flowers and things. And so, and I know that was just part of their culture, but for me as an artist, I was like, oh, that's, I thought that's a really great way to do that. But even then if I try to photograph some of those items, they would come out and not, and I understood, like I kind of stuck out there.
Well, in this day and age too, people are pretty leery of people with cameras, even though we live in this culture where we snap photos all the time. I found over time that people are a little bit more skeptical of people with a camera in their hand, especially if you have it's one thing if it's a phone, it's a whole other deal if you actually have like a DSLR or, film camera. Then they get like, what are you doing? Why are you here?
Yes. And that's what it was too. Having a large camera, I think made them a little nervous, but I went with my phone. No one bothers me at all. So it does make a difference.
Let's kind of circle back real quick. And you left New York. What made you decide to leave your home state, and where did you go, and where did you end up?
It was all my art journey, actually, because once I left the community college, I transferred to SUNY University. And then when I finished my degree there, well, I had gained like a really amazing experience while I was at the university because I worked at the gallery and then I worked with the collection that was there. They have an amazing collection. So once I realized that's what I wanted to do, I went everywhere I could to work in that environment. So initially, I just would go to Virginia Beach to visit my sister. And then I fell in love with Virginia. So I went from New York to Virginia just to be there because I enjoyed the beach and the energy, and everybody was really relaxed. And so you go from New York where everybody's running 100 miles an hour, and then you go into that type of lifestyle by the beach, and everybody's just like completely slowed down. And initially I was so annoyed by how slow everything was. And then I realized how important that was and that I needed that. And I decided I would just freelance. And that's when all of my freelancing started. And I just did so many weird, odd jobs. And I started looking at some of the museums and the galleries in the area. And I ended up at MoCA in Virginia Beach. And I just walked in there to freelance and to help prep the gallery. So I had initially started with just painting the walls at that location and helping with, doing the lighting and cleaning the gallery and prepping and maybe help with installing exhibitions. And then before I knew it, they said, well, would you like to work here? And I said yes. And I ended up becoming their exhibition coordinator initially, and just organizing everything from shipping to receiving to, all the admin things, insurance and all those things. And I just always felt like saying yes to every opportunity, and always biting off more than I could chew. And I just always said yes. So I did the exhibition coordinating thing for a while, maybe a year. And at the time, the curator had decided to move on. And they asked me, would you like to be the curator? And considering who I am and that I always say yes to these opportunities, I said yes, not knowing even how to do that. So then I stayed there and I curated for 5 years at that location at MoCA. And it was just a wonderful experience. I was able to work one-on-one with artists and create just huge environments inside the galleries. I had over 5,000 square feet and 3 different spaces inside there. And so I would either curate exhibitions that had a very, a piece of something that was in common, like water, or just did every gallery had something just completely different. So everybody could come in and have a taste of something that they would like. And so I stayed there, like I said, for 5 years. I think I curated over 70 exhibitions in those spaces in 5 years. So it was really intense. It was a lot of work, and we just had a beautiful group of people that worked there. We did this huge boardwalk art show there that was known internationally. So that was always a 24-hour whirlwind exhibition. And so yeah, once and that was the location that I learned so much there, not only with the people that I work with, but from the artists and seeing the work and curating. And I was so fortunate to be there. And I was working with the Frederick Wiseman Art Foundation from Los Angeles. And I offered this space and they said, yeah, we'd love to come and show the collection. And so Billy Wiseman, who that is the CEO and basically every position at that location, she's like, great, we'll come. And so they did. And they brought, the collection from LA. And that was actually one of those moments too, when you were talking about select a period of art. And that was one of the moments that when I saw this collection, I just realized like how vast and how much art is such a big part of our lives. And it tells, it's such a history, and each piece like just has its own story and can take you exactly back to that place in time. But working with her, we just had such a wonderful time. And like I said, I love the collection, and I think she probably spent a week or two with me. And by the end of that installation, she went back to LA, and within a week or so, she called me and said, would you like to come to LA? And again, I'm impulsive. So I said, yes, I'll come to LA. And, part of it, I always think, I said, being in the right place at the right time, but at the same, thought process, I'm like, no, you have to put yourself in the right place at the right time and know when something's an opportunity. Like, don't miss out on the opportunity, like see it when it comes to you. And that's how I felt about that. And she asked me to come, and I said yes. And so that was my next journey, was going to Los Angeles. And I spent 3 years there with them, with their collection. And I did, I just like try to absorb everything that I could, and learned so much about, I did outdoor conservation on their sculptures. They have a beautiful sculpture collection that's on the main grounds of the house. There's something, you're out there and you're cleaning and conserving and waxing, a Henry Moore or a Jimenez, and you're just like, this is so surreal. Like, you're just like, why am I here? How am I here? How did I get here? And I can't believe I'm here. And I'm like, just waxing an outdoor sculpture. So it was just a great experience. And then the really fun part too, was I was able to travel outside of the state, around the country with the collection, and help with installations. So then I got to continue networking and meeting new people and seeing different locations and art and how they approached it, and museums and artists. And, so that was something that, now I look back on it, I'm like, again, I'm just like, how did all of that happen? And like, just so grateful that I was offered these opportunities, and exposed to all these people and all these places and art. It's even now I think about it and I'm like, who are you? Like, I even think about like how did you get here? Especially, I was thinking about like talking to a friend the other day, because I'm just like not structured. And I mean, I have, do the things that we're supposed to, like, to get through my days and keep a roof over my head. But, I just think that, and I'm just so thankful that I'm not someone who feels like I have to do this, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 thing. Cause I really feel like I would have missed out on all of these things. Like, if I had just like not been open to these possibilities of what could happen or what may happen. And I just always thought that because of my childhood, and we moved every year. I was always moving. And I still do that. It's just kind of become part of my lifestyle. Is I don't worry about moving. Like, I just think if I move somewhere and I don't like it, I'll just move again. So that just led me to this place of just being open and not feeling I do like being connected and grounded, but not so much where I wouldn't allow myself to just go experience something new again. Cause I that's how I've always done it, and it's worked for me. And so it just feels good that I can look back on those moments and be like, I'm glad I didn't pass that up, or I'm glad that, this person saw something in me and invited me to be a part of their world.
It's great that you, even if you did have doubt, you didn't doubt yourself to the point where you said, you know what, I don't think I can do that. That you just jumped in with both feet and said, you know what, I'll figure it out. So I always admire that in a person. I think it's a special trait that some people have. So kudos to you for following that gut feeling and going, all right, I'll do this. You know, I'll figure it out. I'm not worried about it. It's all good.
I do admire you too, because when I moved back to Rapid City, I don't know, it's been like 15 years ago, maybe longer. We bought a house, and God dang, if that doesn't feel like a ball and chain. Like, I would be somewhere else if I didn't have this silly house. And man, to hear your story, if you don't like it, I just get up and move. I kind of miss that. I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps moving around a lot, and thought I wanted to settle down, but man, I get itchy feet. I just want to travel and see things. So I admire that. Yeah.
Thank you. Actually, one of my sculptures is a very old hard case, like a suitcase, and I painted it white, and I take black vinyl letters and I put my addresses on it, but it's a sculpture. And so I think I'm on address 54.
Wow.
Which
I should count up mine. It's not even close.
and I didn't that actually became part of an installation for me, because it was about just, transitioning and how that happens with moving and things like that. And so it was a lot of fun to sit down and try to remember everywhere that I'd been.
Was that part of the one that has a lot of white stuff in it with like books and words that stack? I'm trying to remember where it was at.
Yeah, that one's actually called Our Author of My Current Condition.
Oh, that's it. Is that, was that sculpture in that piece?
It was in that piece.
Okay. I thought I saw something. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, that piece. Yeah, that came about is because I ended up, so because I do move so much, I always say, okay, what was I doing? And to connect with people, what do I enjoy doing? And how did I network? And what was my favorite time when I lived wherever I was? And when I got to Colorado, because when I left LA, because I did stay there for 3 years. And so when I left LA, I came to Colorado with no plan whatsoever, no job, nothing. And so I thought, how did I used to network and make connections? And I was like, I was in college. And like that's like seriously the fastest, easiest way you can like meet people and bond and just like stay connected. So I went to Rary campus and decided I'll just take some more classes. So I did. I went there and I decided to do a BFA in photography, even though I had been photographing my whole life. I took, classes that would last 8 weeks or something like that, but I never actually went to for a degree in it. And so I thought, I'll just go to Rary campus and, see what happens. And then I found out later that they had the best black and white darkroom and color darkroom and then digital darkroom, and said, I made a good choice. This is good. and that's what I did. So I started taking classes and then connecting with people, and wasn't planning on staying there to complete a degree, but then I did for my BFA. That's how that installation came into fruition, because initially I created 2 photographic series that were a part of that. And for some reason I could feel that the photography was not presenting my concept the way I wanted it to. And so having completed the 2 photographic series though, and it was all about my childhood and how I grew up and childhood traumas and how that impacted me. And I just kept looking at this work and I said, it just wasn't portraying, or almost like it wasn't imposing itself enough, being 2-dimensional. And I really don't know how it went from that to what the final installation was, but the words came to me before the project. And so author of my current condition became therapeutic as well. So I guess a lot of my work gets me through a lot of my, just to work through things. And so not only in being able to process things and be aware of what's happening or how to work through things, but also because that installation had over 400 books, and not only finding them, but then carrying them, loading vans. So I would load a van full, bring it to a temporary studio, unload them. And so the physicality of it was also part of that process and helped purge these traumas. So the physical part of it, and then also the writing that I did, because so in the end, I ended up like 400 books, painted them all white. So it was kind of like a clean slate, and there was nothing else you could read into them, just all white. And then I built cairns out of them, because the idea of them being unstable was very important to me as well. And I had completed some auto writing. And so I just did free writing, and that was the text that I used on the books. And so that text actually came directly from my thought process and my memories of that childhood time. And it was very interesting to have this temporary studio. So I had someone help me paint them all. And then I did all the text. And I actually, every single letter, it wasn't vinyl. It was when you burnish them and you rub them on. So I rubbed every single, so that in itself was therapeutic and very, because you had to be so focused, and so same thing, you had to be so present that like to burnish every single letter. I don't know how many letters. I have to go back and look at that, and then to build it. And then I photographed it in the studio, and then I had to take it all down and then rebuild it again at CBA, which is where we had the BFA show. And at the time, I had a really good friend who set up a camera and did a time lapse for me. And it was a 16-hour installation. And I think the time lapse is, 4 minutes or something. How like it's very condensed. So it looks like it was very effortless. And I love building things too, and I love using my hands. So that particular work had so many levels that it worked on for me, between materials and concept and just the physical exhaustion of it, mind, body, and spirit. It just exhausted me. But in the end, it was so freeing. I love that piece. And I still have it. It's in storage. That's the one hard thing about having 3-dimensional pieces. You have to have
I was going to
storage.
ask you, I'm like, so where does this thing live right now? Like, especially since you move around so much.
Exactly. It's living in storage right now. Maybe somebody will want it. I don't know. I did install it a few times. I installed it at another location. They were doing exhibitions about how people used books, and they said, "Oh, we want that." And so I found myself coming up with a system to remember to somehow put it together because it was all very intuitive. I just built things, and most of the galleries, it was interesting because they were a little nervous about somebody knocking parts of it over. And I said, well, that's part of it. If they knock it over, it's okay. Just leave it. And so that was hard for them to comprehend and to just let it lie kind of thing. And so, but I was surprised no one ever knocked anything over. I was hoping someone would, because it was part of it, because that's part of us as humans, like building something up and then sometimes it crumbles, and then you pick yourself back up, and then you build something up again, and you build yourself up again. And that's what that was about too, to come to terms with those moments and those memories. And so that was hard, and I don't know the words. It at times was devastating, and I didn't know if I could finish it. But when it was done, I was like, just felt like I had worked through something and past something, and to share that. And the best part about the whole the exhibition and that installation was that people responded emotionally, like so strongly and emotionally to it, because they were the people that, again, stood still long enough to read the text and to understand what it was. That some people would come back and just ask me to, and sit on the floor with me in the middle of the books, and just share their most intimate things with me. And that's how the autobiographical confessional art came about, because that was a huge movement in my work, and that people felt safe, that I had allowed myself to be open and vulnerable, that they could do the same with me and feel safe in that environment, and know that they could share that they weren't alone, and that we all have suffering. And so, people came up to me even at the opening, and were hugging me and crying and saying, "Thank you for sharing this." And, it touched my heart so much. It still does, and and that's what art is, like, to be able to move someone and to share yourself. It's just so precious, and it's just something I carry with me all the time, and I love it. Sorry.
No,
don't be
That's
sorry.
awesome.
That's an amazing story. And you know what? This is a common theme that we've in talking with a bunch of artists, how art can be therapeutic, and how you can work through certain things, and then have people come and view it and respond to it, because even if they didn't have the exact same experience, they've had a similar experience, and they can relate to it on some level. And you've affected them so much that they want to sit on the floor and tell you their story. That's powerful stuff. That shows you the power of art.
Yeah, it's so powerful and so joyful and overwhelming, and you just give so much of yourself. So when that comes back like that, when someone can expose themselves as well in such a vulnerable, intimate way, it just makes it all worthwhile. Because being an artist can be a struggle, of course. Not in so many ways, emotionally and financially, and you put yourself out there, and you don't know how people are going to respond, or I hate to say the word like it, but like, everybody has their own taste, and you just hope that that one person will come through the gallery or through that space and just have a moment, so it just means so much. I don't even have words. It's just like when you get to share that, it just means the world to me. I love being able to do that.
When you boil it down to the bare essence, I think that's what art is supposed to be. It's supposed to be, number one, it should move the artist. It should, like you said, it comes from you, so it has to be a part of you. So at the very base of it, its purpose is to move people in one shape, way, or it doesn't necessarily move everybody the same way, or everybody at one time, or everybody that sees it. But when you get right down to it, that's the purpose of art. And that's why it's so important in our community and in our history, and why cultures are defined by their artwork, is because that's their purpose, is to share the struggle of the artist or the community, or what it says to the viewer.
Yeah. And I think that's always, whatever medium is being used or whatever is being exhibited, I think to elicit a response, whether it's joyful or somebody says, I don't like that. And guess what? That's still a response. If they decide they don't like it, there's a reason why they don't. And it could be something that's deep down inside of them. And maybe they don't even know what that is. But if you can elicit any kind of response from somebody, I think you've done something right.
I want to go down a little rabbit hole with you. You know, you said you etched all these words on these books. It appears, correct me if I'm wrong, but you must write poetry as well. Are you a poet as well, or?
I do write. Going back to like when we first started talking, like I had always been, even as a young child, I've always been creating. I just didn't know it. I was just always intuitively doing it. And so I was always writing poetry or the automatic writing, which is just free form writing where you don't worry about anything else. You just like let everything just spill out of you. And there's no, you don't worry about sentence structure or complete sentences or if it even makes sense. It's just a way to purge all of these thoughts and memories and ideas out of your head onto the page. And not knowing it, in the end, it does mean something, and it is telling you a story. It's just in a very open verse. And so I always found that I had been writing, whether it was poetry or kind of like personal essays and even music, like writing lyrics and things like that. But I just did it. Like I just was doing it because it was something that was in my head. And I kind of like, it's one of those things that'll keep spinning and twirling until you get it out. And like, if I don't get this on the page, or if I don't create it as a photograph or as something, it feels like you're just going to go crazy. You have to get it out. And then you can go on to the next piece that comes up and does the same thing. And that goes and swirls around. But yeah, the automatic writing, I really enjoy doing that. And then I started a memoir, writing my personal memoir, probably at least 5 years ago. And it started and it stopped and it started and it stopped because at the time I wasn't emotionally ready to write it. And I didn't realize that at the time. I do now. I understand now. I was like, this is why I couldn't do it. But now that I've gone through huge transitions and transformations in my life since 2016, and especially 2018 till now, I have decided to start writing my memoir again. So I started taking classes at the Lighthouse Writers, and so many beautiful, supportive, encouraging people at the Lighthouse Writers Group. And I took an 8-week class. I just couldn't believe the bond that I made with the people in my class, because it's the same thing. You're writing a memoir and you're allowing yourself to be so vulnerable, and you're talking about your personal experiences and things like that. And we still are we created our own writing group outside of that because of that. And so we all still spend time together and support each other and do writing workshops for each other so we can help people get through, writing blocks and things like that. But so I'm writing my memoir, and I found that that's just like another creative outlet that gets me into another place in my mind. And again, very therapeutic because I'm working through all these things that I lived through as a child. It's creating connections with a few of my siblings, because I'm like, do you remember whatever it was? And what do you remember from that? And things like that. But from taking this class, and, I was like, is this something I can do? Can I really do this? And then after taking that class, and then my instructor was really, really supportive. And she said, you should submit to go to this writing residency. And I was like, am I ready for that? I don't know if I'm ready for that. And then I went back to what I always say. I'm like, just, just try it. Like what's the worst that can happen? They say no. And then you just keep writing your memoir, right? Like it doesn't matter. And, so I submitted not thinking anything about it, and then I received an email saying, hi, you're accepted. And I said, oh my good. I was like so, because it's a worldwide residency that is in India, and they only select 10 people. And I was like, what? Again, I was like, who are you? What's going on? How is this happening? But it's the same thing. I think it's just taking chances and putting yourself out there, and whatever happens, you just move on to the next thing and just keep trying and keep pushing yourself and challenging yourself. And for me, I love being challenged and trying new things and experiencing everything I can. And so now I'm going to India to do a 2-week writing residency. And like, I never would have thought that I would be doing that a year ago. Of course, everything's been postponed a little bit because of COVID. But even that, I'm like, I was like, I'm still so fortunate that it's not canceled. So I'm like, so it's still good. I'm like, that's great. Along with all of these other art events and things, which I'm sure so many artists are struggling with, a lot of the things that we have been creating for those exhibits have either been postponed or canceled and things like that. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that are struggling with that along with myself. And I just like, it's okay. It's postponed. It just gives me more time to write before I get there. That's how that's how I put it in my, how I'm processing that. And I was like, it's okay. Plus I still had to get all my shots. Like you have to have so many vaccinations. Like I was like, okay, great. Like initially you're just so excited that you're going. And then you realize there's a lot to do. You have to get a lot done before you go anywhere. And at the time, I think they only gave me, it was definitely under 60 days to prep to get ready to go to India. So, you have to get your visa and your vaccinations and everything. And so, which I actually did accomplish all of that. So I was ready to go. But yeah, so that's my writing adventure that's coming up. So I'll be going to India in April of 2021. So stay tuned. And I'm sure I'll be doing a lot of photography while I'm there as well. And and I was thinking about that too the other day. So I'm like, okay, I'm writing a memoir. But then when I was thinking about my photography and how it's self-portraits and is kind of creating this archive of my life. And so I was like, oh, so it's a visual memoir. And that came to me on one of my meditation walks. And I was like, oh, so I have a writing memoir and then I have a visual memoir. So I just thought, how that was such a great continuance of what I've been doing, just in a different medium.
So on your meditation walks, do you have a prompt that you're going for, or you just kind of whatever pops in your mind you think about, or, are you walking with purpose, or are you walking with, as it comes to you? So
I have this whole ritual that I do every morning, and it's and I love that I start my morning a certain way. So it's all very kind of like self-awareness. And
do you want to share it?
Oh, you want to hear my crazy ritual in the morning? Yeah. Oh, okay. So, so I initially wake, I put my hand to my heart and create my intentions for the day. Cause you can get up and just wander around through the day and it's fine as well. But so I put my hand to my heart and I create and think about a certain, specific intentions for the day, not to overwhelm myself, but a few intentions that I want to do, whether it's for myself, like spiritually, or a list. We all have a list that we need to do. But like prioritize first, and then whatever happens, like do what you have to do, and then do whatever else. So I start that way, and then I do a routine of stretches and yoga. And then I head out the door and I walk for 1 hour, wherever I go. It usually is 4 miles, but sometimes I get caught up doing photography. And so I don't worry about how far I'm going, because if something reveals itself to me, I just take it in and I just don't worry about how far I'm going. But as I walk, I continue my intentions, and I always find some place that's beautiful to sit and meditate. So I meditate for 15 minutes. and just be, basically it's like to be mindful and to be compassionate with myself, because every one of us, I think, are so hard on ourselves. Was I productive? What did I do? What didn't I do? Did I let someone down? Did I let myself down? And, all those things. And so just to be mindful and be compassionate with myself and say, okay, I didn't do well yesterday, but today's a new day. It's a new day. I can start over and do whatever, make it better today. And so I meditate for my 15 minutes, and then I finish my walk and I come back, and then I jump into all the technology. So I do my phone and my emails and my phone calls. And because I work with people nationally, I start on the East Coast and make my phone calls and work my way west. And, but yeah, I find that having that ritual has changed my life, because at the end of 2019, it was a very difficult time for me. 2018, my father passed away. And so I had to find a way to work through that in a healthy way, because prior to that, I had lost a few people and I did not work through it in a very healthy way. So I was very self-destructive. So I was like, okay, you really have to take care of yourself and love yourself and find a way to get through this. And so, so initially, with that kind of situation, you can distract yourself easily, because there's so many things you have to do when someone passes. Like I spent a year and a half trying to take care of his estate and finish things there, renovating houses and those kind of things. So it was easy to be distracted. And then when it was done, then it all comes in, and you realize you haven't allowed it in, and you haven't mourned yet, and you haven't worked through it yet. And so that was all like 2018, 19. And then when 2019 ended, that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to be just more mindful and to really care for myself. And it's working. It's working. So, and just, I think with those kind of rituals that are self-care, that opens me up to so many other things, like just having lived that lifestyle for 2019 and 2020. Honestly, I think it's what got me through COVID, because I am very social and I love being out and I love meeting people and interacting and everything. And so, like to spend that much time with yourself, you really got to like yourself, so, so that made a difference for me. And, so now it's allowed me to create a balance of having this quiet moments with myself and being social, where before it was just out going. So now having that balance, I think, has really changed my life and has opened up so many new things to me. And again, like being in the right place at the right time and noticing when there's an opportunity and creating opportunities for myself. And so just within the past, I would say 6 to 8 months, I've had so many art opportunities that have come to me because I was being receptive to it. And again, being impulsive and being like, yes, let's do it. And, and not like overthinking it too much. And so that's brought about a number of art residencies and collaborations with artists, and which I love doing collaborations because I like to see other artists, what their process is and how they are creating their art and how they go from point A to point B, because obviously for each one of us, it's very different. So that, and during that, that ritual of walking, I do just let my mind wander, and I've come up with a whole solo exhibition for work that I want to create just by doing that as well. I come back and I write everything in my journal. And so I have a solo exhibition that I want to create now because of that. And I need help, though. I need some artists to collaborate with to make it happen, because I don't have all the skills to make it happen. So I'm looking for people to do that with me. But yeah, and it's just, I just have found that my life has transformed into something I never knew it could be, or that this is where I would be. to do something like that every day is, and it's like, for me, I'm taking that time for me. And then I found that that's really important, because I often just give all of myself away, and, which I love helping and, doing things for other people, but you have to remember that you got to do it for yourself too.
On your Facebook page, I happened to see that you made a boat with a picture of you and your father in it, and you sailed it down with some beautiful music playing.
Mm-hmm.
That was touching. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I've learned I've had so many losses since 2016, like people who are like so important to me. So like in 2016, Jolyn Dewsbury passed away. I'm the director of her estate now. And I think at that time we were together 6 years, working together and helping her market and sell and do all those things and transport and exhibitions and things like that. She had passed of pancreatic cancer. So we knew a year and a half in advance that it was going to happen. So we had that special time together, and not only just to, put everything in place to make sure the estate was in place and fulfill all her wishes that she wanted. And she asked me to stay on as her director, which I was completely honored to stay on. And I still work with the collection, but that was someone who was such a big part of my life. And when she passed away, I did not know how to handle that and how to process it and how to deal with it. And so I fell apart. And then my father passed in 2018, 2 years later. And since I had learned the hard way the first time around, when my father passed, I wanted to find a way to commemorate him and remember him and have a special moment with him. And it actually came out of a private joke that I had with my father, which my mother completely hated. But I always told him, if you pass away without a will, I'm going to give you a Valhalla send-off. And don't you know, he passed away without a will, which made it even more difficult. But I don't think I ever posted the Valhalla. But I actually got a Valhalla boat. It was like a ship. It was like 2 feet long. A friend of mine got it for me, and we filled it with all the things that were objects that were reminded me of my father and things he did and drank and ate and all those things. And I did. I set it on fire and set it afloat behind his house, because we had this huge pond behind our house that we grew up at. So it was he still lived in the same house in upstate New York that I grew up in. So I did a Valhalla send-off for him. So needless to say, every single year, not only because all the dates are so close. So he passed the first week in May. And then right after that, it's his birthday and Father's Day the same day. So it's all very, it's a lot. And so by building these boats, and I always put his little picture on there, or I put something in there that's of him, and I just send it down wherever I am, there's a water source. So I've done it in New York, Colorado, and Oregon for him. And, so now, I mean, it's still very hard, but it's very joyful, because one, he always wanted to travel. He never traveled as much as he wanted to. So I take him everywhere with me, whether it's with the boat or this little Papa Smurf stuffed animal, which has a whole nother story to it. But so I take him everywhere I go. So he has his own, so he is traveling now. Because he never did it before. So I take him with me everywhere. And so that's what the boats are for as well. So I always send him off on those special dates and spend a little time with him on the water, which I just did on my paddleboard for Father's Day. So that was a lot of fun. So I did that at Chatfield. So he's never been paddleboarding. So now he's been paddleboarding.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Todd, your turn.
It's kind of nice just to sit back and listen for a change.
Okay, on that point then. No.
He's like, I need to make another gin and tonic.
No. Still my first one. What are you talking about? So talk to us about, you have a couple new series that you've been working on. Talk about those series that I've been seeing on social media. The floral series, and then you have this proposition series as well that I've
Yes. So they are still self-portraits, and they still are, investigating identity and the self and gender and so the because of COVID and being quarantined and things like that. So the one thing I could do was still go on my walks and things like that. And I was stuck inside. And so I allowed one more time, as I did with Walking Wonders, for my phone to become an extension of myself, because we are not only, I think, psychologically, but also physically attached to our phones. So I let that become an extension of myself again. And so I had found this really wonderful lens that I can snap onto my phone right over the camera lens, and it allows me to do macro photography. And so I started doing the flowers, and I've done those actually everywhere I've traveled as well. So I've taken images all over the country with that method and with that thought in mind of, in a way, like it being a self-portrait, not only because of the location that I'm in, but also the sensuality of it. So because I use my body all the time in all of my work, which is, I guess, sometimes why I feel so, I mean, I want to expose myself and be vulnerable, but I think it's even more so as a self-portrait, because that's you, and people, not only are responding to the work, but as an individual, as a person, as like, and sometimes if you can see my face in the image, then they see you standing in the gallery and they just, they're looking back and forth and going, oh, that's you. And, so it makes it even more connected too. But the flowers, I wanted to do those to be a connection between myself and nature, but also to be the flower itself to be very sensual and very feminine, which obviously, by looking at that, you can tell is obviously a very, a construct of the vagina. So it's very sensual, but it's and a part of myself. So I just, that's kind of how that came about. And some, of course, as an artist, we're very hard on ourselves. So I feel like some are more successful than others. But even when it's maybe not exactly what like the final image wasn't what I wanted to achieve, I still got to spend this time out in nature and to spend time with myself as well. So that was part of that. And then the macro series was another one that I was working on and that I still am. These are like never ending series. They're just like, because I'm always outside and I'm always walking, that, we'll come to a point where I'll select and exhibit the ones that, that mean the most to me. But it's not something that I ever feel that's ever complete or ever done or that I'll ever stop, which I love that type of work. And so the macro series is the same thing where I'm outside, I'm in nature, or even if I don't know, there might be a few that are interiors as well, but it's just that like texture. Like I just think that nature just has this feeling, I hate to use the word perfection, but it just makes the right textures and compositions and colors and the way that they contrast each other. And so I just am enamored by the whole thing. And so I don't know any other way to keep it with me than, so I photograph it. And so I always have it with me. So that's a macro series that I've done. Propositions, again, is that's another series of self-portraits and a filter that I found that I've been enjoying using and seeing how I can just That's an experiment. That series is definitely an experiment. And it's also me pushing the limits of social media, because if people, again, and I especially like showing it on Instagram, because that particular media is all about image and like people scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And that is a particular, that series is something where you have to take a moment and slow down and look at it to see what it really is, which is my body. And I kind of have been pushing the limits to see if they'll shut my site down by the things that I'm posting, which I haven't shut down once. But it wasn't for my art, though, which is funny. It was actually an exhibition that I was taking pictures of, but which is strange. But yeah, so I'm definitely pushing the limits and challenging social media with that series, because I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I really like that." I'm like, do you know what it is? And so it just is, without me even knowing it. It was also a part of me learning to slow down and realizing how much other people aren't. And so that's how I've realized, like, everything is just moving at such a fast pace. And especially on social media, where we're just scrolling through things and everything is just being skimmed. We're skimming everything. I even noticed people are skimming text messages. I'm like, okay, that was like 10 words. How did you skim that and miss what I was saying? But that propositions is experimental with not only my phone and the filter, but with what I can get away with, actually.
Are you also exploring it's sexual in nature. So you're exploring your body and your sexuality. Like, what is I know that you're pushing the boundaries, but what is the impetus to do this and to it's very, like you said, if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss it. And if you are paying attention, you go, wait, what was that? Did I just see what I just thought I saw? It
is definitely meant to be provocative. I'm not in any way trying to, shy away from that. It's definitely provocative. It's sexual. It is gender oriented as well. I've been working with that idea of gender or non-gender. So in a triptych that I created called Transitory Rituals, so each piece is 60 by 40 with objects that go with each one. And I made myself genderless specifically because I found that we are so easily defined by our external appearance. And so that was really important for me to do in that piece. And so I find that I'm still developing and defining that idea. And so propositions, it's not necessarily the contrast to that. It's not like complete, okay, I went from being genderless to like being completely feminine, but it is definitely about our bodies and how we are defined and labeled by how we look. And I always find it, I guess I shouldn't be surprised anymore, but I am surprised how often people will walk up to me and say something right to me, even though they don't know me, and say something so intimate about how I look or my body or things like that. And so I thought, I'm going to own it, and I'm going to use that as a platform to let people go ahead, look, judge. It's okay, because I'm who I am, and I'm proud of, not necessarily my appearance or what I present externally, but everything I've done and everything I've experienced is right here, and this is who I am. And so if that's how they're going to judge me, that's, I feel like they're missing out. But at the same time, I've always used my body in my photography, not only as self-portraits, but to create a dialogue about that, about how there's that quick, it's just so fast. It's just incredibly, and I know this comes from just how our own culture or how we were, how we were brought up and what we've learned and how educated we are and things like that, of how quickly we judge and put people in a box of just because of an external appearance. And I just had found lately, I shouldn't say late, in the past 2 years, definitely because of the work that I've been putting on exhibit and presenting, that people question not only why I'm doing it, but I guess overall they just trying to figure out who I am. Maybe I'm not sure. I just find it really interesting that, and for me to use my body just makes, for me personally as an artist, it just makes sense for me, because not only have I always done that, but now it's even more so because I've really have learned what my work is about, and that is about identity and how it's impacted by the people around us and the world around us, and who we bring into our lives, and that consistently transforms as well. And so it's not static. It's not something that this is not only how I feel today or how I appear today. We're all a work in progress. We're always trying, whether, it's to better ourselves or to learn something else or to meet new people or anything. I just think we're always transitioning. And for me, that I'm not quite sure how to say it, because I've had some negative responses to my work, not the work itself, but that I used my body. So for instance, like the transitory rituals, the triptych, the first time I exhibited it was on Santa Fe Drive at Sync Gallery, and it was right in the window. And it just happened to be during the Me Too movement. And so it was received in so many different ways. I didn't know what that meant to the work. So, and I don't want to overgeneralize or anything, but it seemed like some people were very open to it. Because it's really interesting. If you look at the work, there's absolutely nothing showing there. And that's why I made myself genderless as well, not only because of something I was working through personally, but also because I felt that way, it kind of made it, in a way, it made it universal. Well, everyone could respond to it because it wasn't male, it wasn't female, or anything in between. It was just a figure. And I found that people were filling in the blanks. They're like, but that's you, 5 feet high, nude in the gallery. I'm like, but I'm not. Yes, I didn't have clothes on, but there was nothing, like you couldn't see anything. So for me, I didn't feel that, which that's a whole nother conversation, nude versus naked, which was the other show that work went into. But so people were filling in that it was a full nude, but there was nothing, but I wasn't showing anything. And because of the Me Too movement, some people came in and just walked right past it, like covering their eyes and just like, because they were afraid if I looked too long, especially if it was male, if they looked at it too long, they felt that
they were going to be judged.
Yeah, they would be judged, and that they were objectifying the work or objectifying the person who created the work. When I'm like, no, that's why it's here on display. You're supposed to look at it, like take the time to digest it. And I don't even know how it all started. I've always done self-portraits, and I don't know how that came about outside of not having money for a model or not. Or no, I couldn't talk anybody into doing the things I was doing either. I'd be like, so I'm going to hang you in that tree. And, they're like, no, I don't think so. So, and then, and I think most importantly, doing a self-portrait And because I'm working with the concept of my identity and my memories and my transitions, it wouldn't make sense to have anyone else in there, because they haven't lived my life and they haven't had my experiences. So to have someone else there as a model it removes that part of it.
So I want to back up a little bit. You said that at some exhibits, you've had people actually come up to you and make these intimate comments. Are these comments derogatory?
So depending, like for the installation, that was totally different. For this last series with the triptych, they were derogatory. They were like, I'm going to try to be as PC about this as I can. But so someone said, of course you're doing self-portraits and of course you're doing nudes. Look at you. And I thought, no. I mean, I couldn't, for me, doing a self-portrait and especially a nude, I couldn't imagine any other way to strip myself down and be more vulnerable. That's how I see that, is like, I'm giving everything. I'm giving you all of me. Nothing's hidden. Like, that's me. And I don't understand. I don't know any other way you could be more vulnerable. But they saw it as, well, you did it because of the way you look. You just want to show off your figure. And
they were looking at it as vanity instead of being vulnerable.
Exactly.
You were actually trying to achieve the opposite, and they were reading it more of a vanity thing.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good word. That's a really good way to put it. And so then I challenged them and I said, so you feel that this would be more impactful if I, for instance, had scars, or, which I mean, obviously I do, but like something very noticeable, like, or some issue with my body, whether, malformation or, because there's some really beautiful series that are out there for women of women who've had breast cancer and things like that. So that was the first thing that came to my mind when they said that to me. I said, so you feel like it would be more impactful if there was some deformity in my body, or if I wasn't thin or, athletic or whatever. And they didn't know what to say. And I said, well, I just felt like that was a very, I don't know if I want to say uneducated, but it was a very shallow snap judgment of my work for someone to just, that's all that they saw from it, was like, well, if I looked like you, I would do that too. And I'm like, you should do it. Like, you go ahead, set a camera up and see. It's not easy to like be that vulnerable and allow the public to come do that and like look at the work and judge it. And like, so, and there was like with most things, like, there, of course, there was some younger people that came in and they were, giggling and like, what, there's always that, but, which, I'm like, that's fine. That's just part of the, them learning about art and things like that too. But I felt that, like, I don't know. I'm like, how do you feel? Like, what do you think? I mean, outside of them thinking that it's vanity, like, I mean, how do you feel, or what do you think about when you walk into someplace and there's nudes? I mean,
I think I think we live in a weird time, for one.
Yeah.
And how nudity is perceived. And I think
especially in the United States.
Right. And I was just going to go there. So if you had presented that work in Europe, mm-hmm. I don't think there would be that kind of commentary, because the American ideal or American view of body image is completely different than it is in other places of the world. It's a huge travesty that we feed young women these images that they have to have this perfect body. And if they don't have this perfect body, then they're not beautiful. They're ugly. And that's just so completely wrong. And it causes, I think there's a lot of underlying problems that come from that. I think that image, that self-image that a lot of girls have, is unrealistic, and it causes a lot of mental trauma in our society. One thing I've always done, I have a 20-year-old daughter, and she's beautiful. And I've told her from the very moment that she came into our world how beautiful she is. I always try to, remind myself that I need to tell her that. I think it's important. And she is a very self-assured young lady. But I don't think a lot of
Well, that's because of you.
Right.
Right.
But I think you trying to change the perception and having the conversation, that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge divide between how it is in the United States and how it is with the rest of the world. Like I was saying, if you had presented that work in Europe, it wouldn't even be an issue. Right.
I agree.
I think the other thing is you have that view, and then you have the alt-right religious Christian view where nudity is wrong and is equated to pornography. And I think that is just as harmful on the American psyche, because we should be able to look at an image, and there's a lot more going on in these images, although I'd love to see these because these look phenomenal, and then to get the pieces underneath, because I can't really tell what they are, but there's a lot going on there it's beyond the nudity, and the fact that you're genderless speaks something, and then the background, and then the titles of ritual of growth, ritual of breath, and ritual of clarity. I mean, you're obviously telling something a hell of a lot deeper than they're getting on the very surface. They're titillized by what they see and then want to be judgmental, like the comment of like, well, if I had a body like that, I'd be doing it too. Well, no, you wouldn't. The difference is you're allowing yourself to be a lot more vulnerable than they ever would. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway.
Yeah. And that, and thank you for like the titles. Not you said the titles. I'm like, oh yeah. It was,
I got them right here. That's why.
Yeah. It was another one of those series. I guess my work is very therapeutic. It was another one. That's why it's called Transitory Rituals, because I was working through another transition in my life, and every single object that is with those, because each piece has they have objects that are 3-dimensional objects along with them, as well as overlaid images or above or below my body. Every single thing has symbolic reference and meaning to it. And so, yeah, if they're just walking by and going, they're missing, there's a whole narrative there. There's so much to be said with every single one of those things, because that's when I was starting doing all this mindful practices and meditations and things like that. So all of those practices came together, like all of the images, all of the objects, and everything that was involved was, it was just part of that practice of being mindful and my meditating and working through another transition in my life. And so it is hard when someone just walks past something and, you've put so much of yourself into it, and you just hope that people will take a little time to digest what's there and understand it. But the interesting thing with that same series is that, so when I showed it Santa Fe at St. Gallery, it was, that back in hit and miss with how it was being received and responded to. But then later in the year, it was curated into an exhibition at the art gym, and the show was called Nude versus Naked. So because it was exhibited with other artists who were also using the human form, and most of them were, whether you see it nude or naked, because it was part of a collective, the response was so different. It was received so differently, and so it was just so positive and supportive, and it made me feel like that, like it just made me feel like, okay, I didn't miss the mark on that. Like we were talking about earlier, did what I create make sense? Do people understand it? Are they enjoying it? Or you just want to, like, I once that exhibition was ended, and I understood the difference of where it's being exhibited and where it lays amongst other art, how it's going to be received. I guess I just thought people were more open than that. Like I
Right.
thought, but it made a difference that it was in a group, in a collective, in a group of works that were nudes and all, the figure. So I think maybe that placed it in people's mind that they were going to an exhibition that was about figurative work. And so maybe that already set the foundation for it. And so they were prepared for it. And, but they, even that, so that created an open atmosphere right away too. So, but I was surprised, like just how differently it was received at those two different locations and exhibits.
Kind of goes to show about the context of which it's displayed. Like you said,
Yes.
if it's with stuff that's doesn't relate, sometimes it stands out on its own and it may be miscategorized or whatever. And then you put it into a context of, like what you said, difference between naked and nudity or whatever, totally different context. And now I can judge it amongst others or on its own merit.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it was, the first time it was exhibited, it was with abstract painting.
Yeah.
So it was a big contrast. So people just kind of walked through the gallery and were, looking one way or the other. So it definitely stood out. And like, it was interesting because people would like go up to the window because it was, St. Gallery. So it's all the big glass front. So they would press their faces against the window. And I would be like, come in and look at it. And they were just like, run by, So I'm like, okay, you're not ready for this.
Right. Is that what I think it is?
It's what it was too. Because I mean, same thing. If you're not slowing down and your mind's filling in the blanks. So they probably thought they saw a whole nude when they weren't. So.
Well, I love the piece. I love that it's a triptych. That's awesome in itself. That's a lot of religious undertones there.
Thank you. That's exactly what it was.
I see some Buddhist prayer beads, it looks like.
Yes. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. And I love that it's a multimedia piece that, like you said, there's a lot to take in. The fact that it's superimposed over or behind something else. I think there's a lot of elements going on there and it's beautifully done. So
thank you so much. There is a lot of religious connotations happening there because I grew up in a Roman Catholic household, although because I was the youngest, I didn't practice it that long because our family split. But they imprint it and ingrain it pretty harsh on you, even at a young age. But so yeah, that is a contrast between how I grew up in that type of household and then how I practice now, which is more of a open spirituality. It's not any like solid type of religious practice. But with that particular, I just learned so much about the idea of what's the word? Impermanence. So I learned a lot about impermanence because having lost these people in my life and not knowing how to process it, learning about impermanence in Buddhist practice and Hinduism and things like that, I realized through educating myself and reading and learning and practicing, and that impermanence is defined as knowing that nothing is permanent. And so we find that our suffering comes through the grasping at things and trying to hold on to things. Nothing's permanent. You can't hold on to anything. You can't grasping constantly trying to hold on to things. And you can't because nothing's permanent. And so learning about impermanence allowed me to know how to let go. And so that's what a lot of that work is about. And so, in all the little details, I don't know if you can see in the image, there's 3 jars underneath one of them. And so just learning through this practice that, I'll just give you this little thing because there's so much in every image, but just in those jars alone, each gemstone has its own specific meaning. And then within each jar, there's a certain number of stones, because knowing that through this learning about impermanence, there's 108 human emotions and feelings. You have 38, is it 38 or 36? 38. So 38 past, present, future. And so that equals 108, which that's what the mala is made out of. That's why you have 108 beads on your mala. So there's and that's how many details are in that piece. But if somebody's going to dismiss it so quickly on this quick glance and judgment of it being a figure or nude or whatever they're doing that with, that's just one little part of that piece. And so that's just like how much they're missing out on, because there's probably, each piece has at least 5, if not more, like very distinct things that I've placed inside of them of things that I have gone through and that I processed. And that's why it's called clarity and growth. And, because, and each one of those things coincides with that. So sometimes it's disheartening that I know people are just, bypassing it or dismissing it. But still, for me and for the people that are taking the time with it, it's worth it. And I had someone ask me, it's so hard, why do you do it? And I said, well, you know what? Half the people are going to love it and half of the people are going to hate it. So you know what? I'm going to create it for the half of the people that are going to love it. And it's for me anyways, above anything else. It's for me. It's just a way for me to move. That's how I move through my life. I don't know what else I would be doing.
I never really think about, or maybe not even before this, that we're always going through transition. It just seems like, you're living your life day to day. It slowly changes, but there are points in your life that you hit transitional platforms or whatever that takes you to a different level or a different place. And I didn't really give it a whole lot of thought until we started really looking at your work. So I appreciate that, because I haven't really had that kind of view before.
I mean, and it can be, like you said, sometimes it's so subtle, we don't even know it's happening. And then there are other times when it's just like takes us off our feet. And then there's those, those in between moments, which are just as wonderful too. And some are devastating. Some are beautiful. But I always look at every single one of them as it's what's creating me and my identity. And it's what's every single one of those experiences and everything is a culmination of who I am. And that works with not only who I am personally, but within my art too. Like every experience that I've had, like traveling the country to all these jobs and everywhere I move and everywhere I live and every person I meet is part of that. Like they're all everything is a part of, it's a culmination of absolutely everything. Like all those crazy art jobs we were talking about earlier. And there's so many others, like all the art jobs, all the exhibitions, all the creation and all of those things. It's all a culmination of absolutely everything good, everything destructive, everything in between. It's who I am right now in this exact moment. Talking with you guys right now, like even before we got on the air, I was like, oh my God, like how is this happening? And I just remembered like this incredible conversation with Todd at Bit Factory. And, it all still is a matter of all those, that momentum of being open and available. And so, Bill Tomlinson said, hey, I want to invite you to be part of the show. And I was like, yes. And then, and then I got to meet some new artists that I didn't know before. And then just hanging out there on the first Friday, which was total chaos, but it was a lot of fun. There was like 2,000 people went through that night. And then, I got to have a wonderful conversation with Todd and it's the same thing, like all of that just all comes into place and has created this energy that just keeps growing and fulfilling this life and this moment. Like, I don't know how to say it.
I think that's well said. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what kind of things I know you have the writing residencies coming up next year. What else do you have coming up in 2021?
Yeah. So 2021 is going to be amazing because everything in 2020 was
we just wrote off the whole year. The whole rest of the year. We just wrote off.
Yeah.
Well, it's done.
Share the rest of those months off the calendar. And
yeah, no doubt.
I know. It's like, oh my God, it's June. What the hell?
I know.
But then, so I looked through my list and I said, okay, So every time, because of COVID, I'm like, oh, well, that's not going to happen till October. It's going to be fine. I'll be able to do it. No, didn't happen. So so what happened? So initially, I was supposed to go to India in April. So now I'm going to India in April 2021. And then the next thing, I was supposed to go, my next residency was supposed to be with the Rural Gallery. And I was supposed to go to Marfa, Texas for 2 weeks. So then that is postponed. But I think we can probably get that one in later in this year. So that was like May. I was supposed to go do that. So that didn't happen. So India, Marfa, and then I actually was invited to be a part of Pink Progression. And that's a collective that exhibits different artists around Denver. And that was supposed to happen in October at RIMCAD. But now because of COVID as well, they need this gallery space to use as a classroom so they can keep the students, the 6 feet apart. So now that's been postponed as well. So that's 3 things, but they're still happening. So I'm very excited. They're still happening. And then prior to just before COVID, I was so honored. I was invited by Courtney Cotton to create portraits of her. So we had a wonderful experience together. We've known each other for years. And so I said, are you sure you want me to do it? Don't you want like a portrait photographer? And she's like, well, I want an art, I want to work with an artist because you understand the emotions and the things that go into this. And she said, because we know each other, I trust you, because she was really being like, exposing some strong, not only emotions, but experiences she had. So those are on view. So I did 2 portraits of her, and they're on view at the Littleton Museum. So she was able to install her exhibition, but the gallery's not open. So they've been doing tours, walking through there. So that's open till August 2nd. So I'm hoping that someone will be able to, I think it'll just be probably a little bit of time, but I think that they'll be able to allow visitors to come in with, the rules of spacing and all those things. So that goes to August 2nd. So that was a collaboration that we did at the beginning of the year. So that's one. And then I do have another collaboration that's in process with Daniel Sprick. And that I can't tell you any of the details. That's still in progress, and we're still developing ideas and stuff. So that's still hush hush. I won't get. You'll have to wait for the details on that one.
I can't wait for that, because Daniel Sprick is a person that I'd love to have on the podcast. I think that guy is amazing. So
beautiful work.
I'm really curious now, Lee.
Yeah. So I've been really fortunate that everything that I just had that show just in time at Bit Factory, just before everything went crazy and we had to close everything down. And then everything that's coming up, like the exhibitions and the residencies, they're not canceled, they're just postponed. So I'm very grateful for that, because it takes a lot of time and energy to put into to exhibitions and creating, and so to not be able to share it would be hard. So I'm excited that everything's still going to happen, just postponed. And I think those are probably my 5. I think there's like those 5 projects, but something might come up. Like I said, I do have that solo exhibition that I'm working on, and I do need a video person. So, so I have a feeling that before the end of the year, I'll be finding someone else to collaborate with. And I do have people that we're waiting, because we want to collaborate, and just that, considering what's happening in the world right now, that we have to postpone as well. Like even just the initial talks, we're just like, let's do something together. And we said, yes. And then, but that's as far as like, we're still waiting to be able to continue that conversation and really dig in and try to come up with something. But everybody's just, working through this hard time. And a lot of myself and my friends, we're freelancers, we're just trying to find other jobs, and people are trying to make sure they can take care of their families. So, that's obviously a priority. And so we're all taking that as graciously as we can, and just waiting to be able to get back together.
Do you have plans or is there any plans to show transitory rituals again?
It is actually, that's the piece that the curators selected for Pink Progression.
Okay.
It will be on view again, and yes, it's in storage. but
I
yeah,
really want to see it, though. I'm just really intrigued by it, and so I definitely want to see it. So if you could reach out to Todd or me when that opens,
yeah. Oh, definitely.
I'll drive down and come and check it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll definitely let you know when it's up. And I think, again, because of the way the curators select the work for that particular, I know I probably shouldn't call it collective because it's always different artists all the time, but it's this kind of moving and expanding exhibition. But I think because of the way that the curators select the work, that everything has this bit of edge to it. And I think that it'll, be received again differently, but I think in a good response. I think it'll be reviewed and received in a positive way.
Well, I'll do my best to get down there to see it because I love the piece on the internet. So I know it doesn't even do justice to be in person. So
it is, even for myself, even when I was creating it, once I installed it the first time, I was like, whoa. Like it did. It took on just such a different life to it. And now there's something about, there's a difference anyways, just putting a piece of art or an object or anything in a gallery just automatically, I shouldn't say automatically, but it kind of instantly elevates it and gives it a different life. So, and then to think about what you said before, it does have a lot of religious content in it as well. And I think there's a couple of images on my website. And so initially you see it kind of staticking across, but really the center one is up. So that triptych, how all that religious thing of it being in thirds and the center being higher than the other was kind of another just kind of little, thing that I played with too. So
I'm there.
I'll definitely send you I'll send you invites to everything that's going on.
Perfect.
Fantastic. We'll make sure it gets out.
Yeah.
We'll
promote it as well.
Oh, thank you so much.
On the tenant page for sure. So I guess we'll wrap this up real quick here, but how do people find your work if they want to check out all this wonderful work that you have? Where do they go to see that?
Well, I have my website, which is brendalabier.com. And I know and that was part of my transition as well. I've changed my name. So I go by Lee LaBier now, but it formally Brenda LaBier. So it's brendalabier.com. And then Facebook is the same. Like and Instagram as well. Like everything is under Brenda LaBier. So it's easy to find me. Just know that I've taken on a new part of me. So
can you talk about that? Or is it too personal?
No, it's not personal. Well, it's personal, but I don't mind talking about it.
Okay. I was just curious why you changed your name from Brenda to Lee.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of layers and levels to it. Part of it is that I just never responded to Brenda. Okay. It just never felt like me. It was just my given name. And so I thought I was stuck with it, and then, which, we usually do stick with our names that are given to us. And then over the past 5 years, I actually have tried on a number of names, and some were just to be fun, and some I was seriously seeing if it fit. And I ended up with Lee, not only because it is my middle name, so it is still a part of me and a part of my family and part of my parents, because that's important to me as well, is to still hold on to part of that. But going back to the idea of gender or being genderless, I felt that Lee gave me a place to present myself however I wanted, like, because it could be anything or anyone or any gender, so that was important to me as well. And it just and it just felt right. I part of it was just emotionally and just saying it and people now using it, I was like, oh, that's what it was supposed to be. That's my name. And even some of my closest friends finally, they even said to me like, yeah, Brenda. Yeah, you were never a Brenda. So it's interesting. Funny. It's interesting how your name can really, which I mean, I'm sure you've come across people with certain names, and you're probably like, I always find that if I can't remember somebody's name, it's probably I feel like it's because it's not who they truly are for some reason. Like I was like,
Oh man, I used to blame myself and my memory, but now I totally have an out. It's because that's not who you really are.
Exactly.
Oh yes, I knew it.
I do it. And I actually, people, I don't seem to mind, but I rename people all the time too. Like I have one tattooist. I use the same person all the time. And I don't use her name either. Like her name is Shirley and I call her Jaja. Like, I was like, no, that's not your name. So it's an interesting thing that I like after changing my name, I realized how much I change other people's names as well. But yeah, so it was just something that came as part of this new life that I've created for myself as well. 2020, even with COVID, has been so amazing for me and just such a large transition in every single part of my life. And I know this is going to sound weird, but I'm actually very grateful for it because it allowed me time for myself and for me to do all the things that I'm doing and for me to not find distractions and to become aware of what's really going on in my life, what I want for myself and my goals and my future, and to make everything just deliberate, every decision and the people that I'm allowing into my life is very deliberate. It's not just to be distracted and it's not to fill my time. Changing my name was part of that.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. Way to embrace the whole 2020 thing. No, that's
I know.
And I mean that sincerely, a way to embrace it because, most of us are like freaking out and you're like, I'm going to explore myself and change my name. And
don't get me wrong, I was freaking out in January. I definitely had my moments for sure. But I was like,
we all
okay, yeah, but because then I was like, okay, this is what's happening. How can I just take advantage of this situation? And for me, it was, oh my God, I got to sit down and read. I read 4 books and I was like, I never get that kind of time. So I was able to read and I was able to write, of course, because I'm writing my memoir. I was able to write my journals. I took so many online classes. I was able to take all these memoir classes and
nice.
I took some self-awareness classes again too. And I did a lot of stuff with the Lighthouse writers. And doing a lot of Zoom classes and Zoom with my writing groups. And so, and I know this is probably somebody out there is going to be like, ugh, like, of course, like there's one of those out there that, but I had my moments for sure. I mean, there was like days when I couldn't get off the sofa and there was days when I watched Netflix for 12 hours. I mean, don't get me wrong. I had those days for sure. It wasn't all, beautiful nature walks for sure. Right. There were some hard times. But I just thought, just make the best of, like, what else am I going to do? I was quarantined and I live alone. Like,
right.
What are you going to do? So
what's one book you read? What's one that you would recommend to, like, everybody should read?
I read one called The Liars Club, and it's a memoir. And I know I'm going to hate myself if I can't remember the author's name.
That's all right. We'll look it up.
I think it's Kara something.
I'll look it up right now.
Yeah, look it up. It's called The Liars Club. So I'm trying to educate myself on, obviously memoir writing, but I'm like, well, obviously if I want to read as well, how other people are writing their memoirs and see, like what keeps me reading, what am I attracted to, what am I responding to, and how they're writing and what they're offering. And it was the same as my other art practice, where you're just completely giving yourself up to the public to judge you, like you're being, I know I'm using the word vulnerable a lot, but I'm just completely putting myself out there and exposing myself. And, and like, I was just like, what are people going to think when they read these stories? Because that was the same thing with reading these other people's memoirs. But in a great way that I can say that, well, if they can do it, and let people into their lives and into those very intimate moments and things that are happening or that have happened to them, it was kind of an invisible support of, they shared themselves. Now I can share myself. And then some of the things in their stories also were reminded me of some things that had happened in my life as well. So that, creates this thing of like, I'm not alone. That was the most important takeaway from all the memoirs that I've read during quarantine was, okay, I'm not alone. Like other people have lived similar lives, just at different levels. Some things were more extreme than others for certain people, like certain traumas, we all experience them differently and some are more harsh than others. So, but just to know that I'm not the only one and that I'm not alone and that they've shared it. So I don't feel as intimidated or scared or anything, because that's the last thing I want is like, which I've lived my life that way, which is why I've had all these wonderful experiences, is not to let fear stop me and to, it can ride along. It can be there, but I won't let it take over and I won't let it deter me from doing something I want to do.
So all you artists that want to write a memoir, the book that she recommended is The Liars Club by Mary Karr.
Mary Karr. Thank you. It's wonderful.
I've heard of the book. I haven't read it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's good.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah,
awesome.
Of course.
Todd, you're up.
Hey, Todd.
So this has been a really phenomenal conversation. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it would be great if we could get you back on in 2021 after you come back from some of these residencies and tell us about all your adventures. Would you be willing to do that for us?
Oh, I would love to do that. And maybe we could, I was going to say maybe, once certain things are figured out, maybe we even have another guest too.
Sure.
There you go. I like that idea.
Secret surprise.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to do that. I would really. And so if I get to visit Marfa for my residency this year as well, I'll send you some quick notes and just let you know that I made it too.
Perfect.
Cool.
But definitely 2021 will be inspiring, I think, and fulfilling. And I will have moved even farther into all of not only these projects, but into this, into more transitions as well.
Well, I have to say that it's just been an absolute pleasure to sit down with you and hear your stories and how open you've been. You seem like an absolutely wonderful woman, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to meeting you in the real someday.
Me too.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing. And I look forward to doing it next year.
Awesome. Well, for the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.